The cabin of Delta Flight 447 fell into an uneasy silence as flight attendant Brenda Harlan snatched the inhaler from 17-year-old Maya's trembling hands. "Ma'am, that's not real medicine. You can't bring street drugs on this plane." The words echoed through the first-class section where passengers shifted uncomfortably in their leather seats. Maya Ellison clutched her chest, her dark eyes filling with tears as her breathing grew shallow and rapid. "Please," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the engines. "I can't breathe without it." Brenda held the inhaler up like a piece of evidence. "Next, you'll tell me this candy is chemotherapy." Her voice carried, drawing uneasy glances from nearby passengers. Some already had their phones out. Maya's medical ID bracelet caught the light as she reached desperately for her medication. Her natural hair was pulled back simply, her clothes from thrift stores, and she didn't fit Brenda's image of a typical first-class passenger. Earlier, when Maya had tried to sit in seat 2A, Brenda had immediately assumed she was in the wrong place. "Where did you even get this?" Brenda waved the inhaler. "Your dealer?" The accusation hung in the air. Maya's breathing grew more labored. She pointed to her medical ID bracelet with shaking fingers. "That's fake jewelry," Brenda dismissed without even looking. "I've seen it all before." In another row, passenger Tina Morales was going live on social media, capturing every word and gesture. "You all need to see this discrimination happening right now on Delta Flight 447. Maya tried to explain through difficult breaths. "I'm Maya Ellison. I'm 17. I have severe asthma. I'm traveling alone to my grandmother's funeral in Los Angeles." "Save the sob story," Brenda snapped. "Departure is approaching." The gate agents were preparing to close the door. Maya's phone buzzed in her lap, caller ID showing Dad, but she was too focused on breathing to answer. Her carry-on in the overhead contained her MIT early admission letter and other items that didn't match Brenda's assumptions. "Either this medicine goes in the trash," Brenda announced loudly, "or you get off my plane." Murmurs spread through the cabin. A few in coach craned their necks. The first-class section had gone quiet except for the soft sound of phones recording. Maya's chest rose and fell rapidly. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the cool air. The signs of an impending asthma attack were clear to anyone with medical training, but Brenda saw only what she expected. "You have no idea who you're messing with," Maya whispered, words barely escaping her constricted airways. Brenda laughed coldly. "Right, I'm sure your people will be calling their lawyers." The racist undertone wasn't lost on anyone listening. Tina's live stream was gaining viewers rapidly, comments pouring in with outrage. Maya's boarding pass lay crumpled in her lap. If Brenda had looked closely, she would have noticed it showed seat 2A in first class, but Maya was in 23F in coach. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Flight attendants, prepare for departure. We're number 3 for pushback." Maya's condition was deteriorating. Her wheezing had become audible to passengers several rows away. The elderly gentleman in row 20C, who had identified himself as a retired doctor during boarding, started to rise. "Stay seated, sir," Brenda commanded. "This is a crew matter." But Maya's phone kept buzzing with missed calls from her father. Brenda held the inhaler higher. "I don't know what kind of operation you think you're running, but this is a respectable airline." Maya's response was cut short by a coughing fit that left her gasping. Her lips were beginning to show a faint blue tinge. The aircraft door remained open, but Brenda's ultimatum hung heavy. The other flight attendants watched nervously, uncomfortable but unwilling to challenge their senior colleague. Tina's live stream had gained massive traction, with hashtag Delta discrimination beginning to trend. Flight supervisor Elena Vargas boarded at the gate level, her radio crackling with urgent but fragmented communications about a priority passenger and corporate notification. "What's the situation?" Elena asked Brenda quietly. "Passenger in 23F trying to bring narcotics aboard," Brenda explained with authority. "Claims it's an inhaler, but look at her, classic drug user behavior." Elena glanced at Maya, who was now leaning forward, struggling to breathe. The teenager's condition was visibly worsening. "Did you check her medical documentation?" Elena asked. "Fake bracelet, sob story about asthma," Brenda dismissed. "I've been doing this for many years. I know a con when I see one." Meanwhile, Tina's live stream had exploded in popularity, with hundreds of thousands watching in real time. Let Maya Breathe was gaining momentum. Dr. Raymond Hale, the retired physician in row 20, could remain silent no longer. "Excuse me, but that young lady is showing signs of severe respiratory distress. She needs immediate medical attention." "Sir, please remain seated," Brenda commanded. "This is a crew safety issue." "This is a medical emergency," Dr. Hale insisted, his voice carrying authority from decades in medicine. "I'm a licensed physician, and I'm telling you that girl needs her medication right now." Brenda's jaw tightened. The situation was spiraling, but backing down would mean admitting she was wrong. Corporate policy clearly states that crew safety takes precedence over passenger comfort. The phrase sent a chill through the cabin. 2 TSA agents appeared at the aircraft door. Brenda had called them earlier, requesting removal for suspected drug possession. They approached Maya's row. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us," the lead agent said. Maya tried to speak, but could only wheeze. Her phone buzzed again. "Dad?" She's being non-compliant, Brenda told the agents. Claimed the inhaler was medication, became aggressive when I confiscated it. Dr. Hale stood up. Officers, I'm a physician. This passenger is experiencing a severe asthma attack. She's not being non-compliant. She's in medical distress. The agents looked between Brenda and the doctor, uncertainty on their faces. Maya's condition was impossible to ignore, her breathing labored, sweat soaking her shirt. Without a prescription bottle, we have to side with the crew, the lead agent explained apologetically. Ma'am, if you can't produce proper documentation for your medication... Maya's phone rang again. The sound pierced through her oxygen-starved consciousness. Her father's face appeared on the screen. Through gasping breaths, she managed to press the answer button. Dad, she whispered. Tina's livestream caught the moment now with hundreds of thousands of viewers. News outlets were picking up the story. Hashtag Delta discrimination was trending nationally. The cabin had gone completely silent except for Maya's labored breathing and the low murmur of her phone conversation. Passengers strained to hear, but her voice was too weak. Brenda tapped her foot impatiently. The flight was now running behind schedule. Ground crew were becoming agitated. We don't have all day, Brenda announced. Either she produces proper documentation or she leaves the aircraft. Elena Vargas shifted nervously. Something felt wrong, but Brenda was senior. Hierarchy demanded support. Maya's phone conversation continued in hushed, desperate tones. Passengers caught fragments. They won't let me. Please help. Flight 447. Dr. Hale tried once more. I can verify this is a legitimate medical device. I've seen thousands of inhalers in my career. Sir, you are not authorized to make that determination on this aircraft. Brenda cut him off. Only properly documented medications are permitted. The TSA agent stood awkwardly. Maya's condition was deteriorating, the blue tinge around her lips now visible to everyone nearby. This is insane, someone whispered from first class. Can't you see she's sick? Brenda whirled around. Anyone who interferes with crew operations will be removed from this aircraft. The threat silenced murmurs, but phones continued recording. The live stream audience had grown enormously. Major news networks were monitoring in real time. Maya's phone conversation grew more urgent, though her words were barely audible. The tone conveyed desperation mixed with hope. The aircraft door remained open. Time was running out. Maya had to choose, leave without her medication or convince everyone she wasn't who Brenda believed her to be. Her phone buzzed with one final call. Dad. This time, Maya's trembling finger moved decisively to answer. Whatever was about to happen, this phone call would change everything. Maya's finger trembled as she accepted the call. The cabin noise seemed to fade as she brought the phone to her ear. Her breathing still labored, but her eyes suddenly focused with new determination. Dad, she gasped, her voice barely a whisper but carrying in the silent aircraft. They won't let me use my inhaler. The response from the phone was immediate and clear, though muffled. Maya's expression shifted from desperation to relief. She looked up at Brenda, then at the TSA agents, then back at her phone. He wants to talk to you, Maya said, extending the phone toward Brenda. On speaker? Brenda rolled her eyes. I'm not talking to your... Put me on speaker, Maya. The voice from the phone was calm, authoritative, and carried the unmistakable tone of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Even through the tiny speaker, it commanded attention. Maya's shaking finger found the speaker button. The voice filled the cabin, clear and professional. This is Captain Marcus Ellison, Delta Airlines employee number 7439, Chief of Flight Operations. To whom am I speaking? The color drained from Brenda's face. The name meant nothing to most passengers, but every Delta employee knew exactly who Captain Marcus Ellison was. He oversaw thousands of pilots and reported directly to the CEO. Sir, this is Brenda Harlan, flight attendant, employee ID 47291, she stammered, her earlier confidence evaporating. There seems to be some misunderstanding. Brenda Harlan, Captain Ellison's voice carried clearly. You're currently denying my daughter access to her prescribed asthma medication, is that correct? The word daughter hit the cabin like a physical force. Passengers looked between Maya and the phone with growing understanding. Brenda's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Maya managed a small smile through her breathing difficulties, the first smile since boarding. Sir, I was following standard protocol for unverified medications, Brenda tried to explain, but her voice lacked conviction. Brenda, there is no protocol for denying life-saving medication to minors, Captain Ellison replied, his tone remaining dangerously calm. You are currently violating federal regulations under the Americans with Disabilities Act, Delta's medical accommodation policies, and basic human decency. The TSA agents exchanged glances. The situation had become exponentially more complicated. Elena Vargas stepped forward, her face pale. She recognized the gravity. Captain Ellison wasn't just any pilot, he was one of the most powerful figures in the airline industry. Captain Ellison, sir, this is Elena Vargas, flight supervisor. We can resolve this immediately. The medication will be returned to your daughter right away. Too late for immediate resolution, Elena, Captain Ellison replied. This incident has been broadcast live to hundreds of thousands of viewers. The damage is done. Tina's livestream had indeed exploded. Hundreds of thousands were watching across platforms. Hashtag Justice for Maya was trending worldwide. Brenda's hands shook as she still held Maya's inhaler. The small plastic device now felt impossibly heavy. She looked around the cabin, seeing for the first time the phones recording her every move, the disgusted faces of passengers, the growing realization of her catastrophic mistake. "Maya, are you okay?" Captain Ellison's voice softened when addressing his daughter. "I need my inhaler, Dad," Maya wheezed, her breathing still severely compromised. "Brenda Harlan?" Captain Ellison's voice returned to its professional tone. "Return my daughter's medication immediately, then remain exactly where you are. I'll be there in just a few minutes." Confusion rippled through the cabin. How could Maya's father be there in minutes if he was calling from elsewhere? Brenda numbly handed the inhaler back to Maya, who immediately used it. The relief was visible as her breathing began to improve, though the attack had taken a significant toll. "Sir," Brenda tried one more time, "how can you be here in just a few minutes? Are you calling from Atlanta?" For the first time, there was a hint of amusement in Captain Ellison's voice. "Brenda, I'm calling from Terminal 4, Gate 23. Flight 773 from Denver landed recently. I was deadheading home when I got Maya's emergency text." The revelation sent another wave of shock through the cabin. Maya's father wasn't calling from across the country. He was in the same airport, walking toward their gate at that very moment. Dr. Hale, who had been watching with growing satisfaction, finally spoke. "Young lady, how are you feeling now?" Maya took another puff from her inhaler before responding. "Better. Thank you for trying to help." Her voice was stronger now, though still shaky. "Maya," Captain Ellison's voice continued from the phone, "I need you to stay calm and keep using your inhaler as needed. Brenda Harlan, you are relieved of duty effective immediately. Elena Vargas, you will ensure my daughter receives appropriate medical attention and a formal apology from Delta Airlines." Brenda's career was ending in real time, broadcast to hundreds of thousands of viewers. Many years of service were being erased by her own prejudice and poor judgment. "Sir, please," Brenda pleaded, "I was just trying to maintain safety protocols. I didn't know." "You didn't know because you didn't ask," Captain Ellison interrupted. "You made assumptions based on my daughter's appearance, ignored her medical identification, dismissed the licensed physician's assessment, and created a hostile environment that could have killed her." The cabin was so quiet that Maya's improved but still labored breathing was audible to everyone. "Maya, I'm at the jet bridge now," Captain Ellison announced. "I'll be boarding in under a minute." The aircraft door, which had remained open throughout, suddenly seemed to take on new significance. Everyone's eyes turned toward the entrance, waiting for the arrival of the man who had just turned their flight into a viral sensation and a corporate crisis. Brenda Harlan stood frozen in the aisle, still wearing her wings and uniform, but no longer possessing the authority they represented. Her many years of service were over, ended by a short time of discrimination that would be replayed millions of times across social media. Maya took another breath from her inhaler, her color beginning to return to normal. She looked at the phone in her hand, then at Brenda, then toward the aircraft door where her father would soon appear. "Dad," she said into the phone, "thank you." "Always, baby girl," came the reply. "Now let's show these people what accountability looks like." The footsteps on the jet bridge were clearly audible. Now, Captain Marcus Ellison was about to board Flight 447, and nothing would ever be the same. The footsteps stopped at the aircraft door. Captain Marcus Ellison appeared in full Delta uniform, his presence immediately commanding the attention of every person on board. At well over 6 feet, with decades of aviation authority radiating from every gesture, he filled the doorway like a force of nature. The cabin fell into absolute silence except for the steady hum of the aircraft's electrical systems. Even Maya's breathing, though much improved, seemed loud in the hushed atmosphere. Captain Ellison's eyes swept the cabin, taking in the scene methodically. The recording phones, the uncomfortable passengers, the TSA agent still standing awkwardly in the aisle, and finally his daughter in seat 23F, still pale but breathing normally with her inhaler clutched in her hands. "Maya," he said softly, his voice carrying clearly in the silence, "how do you feel?" "Much better now, Dad," she replied, her voice stronger than it had been in what felt like an eternity. Captain Ellison nodded, then turned his attention to Brenda Harlan. She stood frozen in the aisle, her face ashen, her many years of service about to be scrutinized by one of the most powerful men in commercial aviation. "Brenda Harlan, employee ID 47291, Captain Ellison began, his voice returning to its professional tone. "Do you understand the magnitude of what you've done?" Brenda's mouth moved soundlessly for a moment before she found her voice. "Sir, I was following protocols for passenger safety." "Stop," Captain Ellison's command cut through her excuse like a blade. "Let me explain what you've actually done using facts rather than justifications." He pulled out his phone, not to make a call, but to reference data he'd pulled up during his walk to the gate. Delta Airlines generates billions in annual revenue. The average settlement for discrimination lawsuits in the airline industry runs into the millions. Your annual salary is a fraction of that. You have potentially cost this company far more than your lifetime earnings in a very short time. The passengers listened with rapt attention. Many were still recording, knowing they were witnessing something unprecedented in commercial aviation. But the financial exposure is secondary, Captain Ellison continued. You violated Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and Delta's own medical accommodation policies. You created a hostile environment for a minor passenger based on racial profiling, ignored medical documentation, and dismissed the professional opinion of a licensed physician. Dr. Hale nodded approvingly from his seat. Everything Captain Ellison said was legally accurate and devastating. Sir, Elena Vargas interjected nervously, we can resolve this situation with appropriate apologies and accommodations. Captain Ellison turned his attention to the flight supervisor. Elena, this incident has been broadcast live to hundreds of thousands of viewers. It's trending on every major social platform. Major news networks have already picked up the story. There is no containing this situation. As if summoned by his words, his phone buzzed with an incoming call. The display showed CEO Victor Lang. Captain Ellison declined the call and continued addressing the cabin. Brenda, you have created what we call in corporate terms a career-limiting event, he said, his tone remaining eerily calm. You have two choices and you have a brief moment to decide. The ultimatum hung in the air like smoke. Every phone in the cabin was recording this moment of corporate justice unfolding in real time. Choice 1, immediate resignation with a neutral reference. You leave this aircraft right now, turn in your wings and badge, and never work for Delta Airlines again. But you might find employment with another carrier eventually. Brenda's breathing had become almost as labored as Maya's had been earlier, but for entirely different reasons. Choice 2, termination for cause, permanent blacklist from all major airlines, personal liability for any discrimination lawsuit, damages, federal civil rights violation on your employment record, and potential criminal charges for endangering the welfare of a minor. The possibility of criminal charges sent murmurs through the cabin. Passengers had been entertained by the corporate drama, but the mention of criminal liability raised the stakes considerably. You now have a moment to decide, Captain Ellison announced, checking his watch with precision. Brenda looked around the cabin desperately, as if seeking support. The passengers stared back with expressions ranging from disgust to pity. The TSA agents maintained professional neutrality, but their body language suggested they wanted to distance themselves from the entire situation. Brenda began, her voice cracking. Time's up, Captain Ellison announced. What's your decision, Brenda? I resign, Brenda whispered, the words barely audible. Louder, please, for the record and for the passengers who witnessed your behavior. I resign from Delta Airlines, effective immediately, Brenda said, her voice carrying through the cabin. Captain Ellison nodded curtly. Badge and wings? With trembling hands, Brenda unpinned her flight attendant wings and removed her employee badge. She handed them to Captain Ellison, who pocketed them without ceremony. Security will escort you off this aircraft, he announced. You are no longer authorized to be aboard any Delta Airlines property. The TSA agents, who had initially been called to remove Maya, now found themselves escorting Brenda Harlan toward the aircraft door. The irony wasn't lost on anyone present. As Brenda reached the door, Captain Ellison called out one final instruction. Brenda, before you leave Delta property, you will issue a public apology to my daughter. Not for your career, not for your job, but because a 17-year-old girl deserved basic human dignity and medical care. Brenda turned back, her face streaked with tears. Maya, I'm sorry. I was wrong about everything. I hope you can forgive me. Maya looked at her father, then back at Brenda. I forgive you, she said quietly, but I hope you learn from this. Brenda nodded and disappeared through the aircraft door. Her many years of service ended by a short time of prejudice and poor judgment. Captain Ellison's phone buzzed again, CEO Victor Lang calling once more. This time, Captain Ellison answered. Victor, I'm handling the situation, he said, his voice carrying through the cabin. Full corporate backing is requested and expected. The conversation was brief and clearly supportive. When Captain Ellison hung up, he addressed the entire cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, Delta Airlines formally apologizes for the treatment my daughter received today. This incident represents a failure of our training, our policies, and our values. It will not happen again. Spontaneous applause erupted, surprising everyone, including Captain Ellison. Passengers were applauding not just the apology, but the demonstration of swift, decisive accountability they had just witnessed. Maya, Captain Ellison said, turning to his daughter, your seat assignment was actually 2A in first class. Let's get you moved to where you belong. As Maya gathered her belongings, Dr. Hale approached. Captain Ellison, your daughter handled herself with remarkable grace under impossible circumstances. You should be proud. I am, Captain Ellison replied, helping Maya with her carry-on bag, but I'm also angry that she had to. The live stream had reached enormous viewership. #Justice for Maya was trending globally. Major news outlets were preparing full coverage. Brenda Harlan's career destruction had become a case study in corporate accountability and the power of social media. Maya took her father's arm as they walked toward first class. The cabin was still buzzing with excitement over what they had witnessed. History had been made on Flight 447, and everyone present knew they had been part of something unprecedented. With the situation resolved, Flight 447 eventually took off. Maya sat in seat 2A, where she had originally been assigned, with her father beside her in the captain's deadhead seat that Delta had quickly arranged. Her breathing was completely normal now, but the inhaler remained within easy reach. The cabin atmosphere had transformed completely. Passengers who had initially been uncomfortable witnesses were now approaching Maya with words of support. Flight attendant Sarah Chen, who had replaced Brenda, stopped by their seats every few minutes to check on Maya's condition. "Maya, I want you to know that what happened today was completely against everything Delta stands for," Sarah said during one of her visits. "I've been with the company for many years, and I've never seen anything like Brenda's behavior." Maya smiled genuinely for the first time since boarding. "Thank you, that means a lot." Captain Ellison had spent most of the flight on his phone, coordinating with Delta's corporate headquarters. The airline was moving with unprecedented speed to address the situation and prevent similar incidents. "Maya, listen to this," he said, hanging up from yet another call. "Delta is implementing immediate policy changes based on what happened to you today." He pulled out his tablet and showed her the emergency corporate bulletin that was already being distributed to all Delta employees worldwide. Effective immediately, all flight attendants must complete extensive medical device recognition training right away. Any crew member who denies access to properly identified medical devices faces immediate termination. Maya read over the policy changes with growing amazement. Her ordeal was already creating systemic change throughout the airline industry. "There's more," Captain Ellison continued. "Delta is launching a MedAlert app integration with passenger profiles. When passengers check in, they can register their medical devices and conditions. The information will be immediately available to all crew members." The technology solution addressed exactly the kind of ignorance and assumptions that had led to Maya's humiliation. No future passenger would have to endure what she had experienced. "Dad, this is incredible," Maya said, scrolling through the policy updates. "But what about other airlines?" "Already happening," Captain Ellison replied with satisfaction. "American, United, and Southwest have all contacted Delta requesting copies of these new policies. Your ordeal is going to protect thousands of passengers." Dr. Hale, who had been following the developments from his seat, approached during the meal service. "Maya, I want you to know that I've contacted the American Medical Association about what happened today. We're developing standardized medical identification protocols for all commercial aviation." The ripple effects were expanding beyond Delta, beyond commercial aviation, into the broader healthcare and civil rights communities. Maya's story was becoming a catalyst for change across multiple industries. Tina Morales, the passenger who had live-streamed the entire incident, stopped by their seats near the end of the flight. "Maya, my video has been viewed by millions. The comments are incredible. People are sharing their own stories of discrimination, talking about change, demanding accountability." "What happened to Brenda?" Maya asked quietly. "Last I heard, she was trying to get a job at a retail store," Tina replied. "No airline will touch her. The video is the first thing that comes up when you search her name." Maya felt a complex mix of emotions about Brenda's fate. Justice had been served, but the destruction of someone's livelihood still felt heavy. "Maya," her father said, sensing her conflicted feelings, "what happened to Brenda was the consequence of her choices, not your actions. You handled yourself with more grace than most adults would have." As Flight 447 began its descent into Los Angeles, Maya reflected on how completely her life had changed in a single day. She was no longer just a teenager flying to her grandmother's funeral. She had become the face of a movement, the catalyst for industry-wide reform, and a symbol of quiet strength in the face of injustice. In the months that followed Flight 447, Maya Ellison stood before a congressional subcommittee on transportation and civil rights, testifying about discrimination in commercial aviation. The MIT freshman had become one of the most recognizable voices in the fight for passenger rights. "The changes implemented after my experience have dramatically reduced medical discrimination complaints across Delta Airlines," Maya told the assembled congressman. "But the real victory isn't in the numbers, it's in the letters I receive from parents whose children no longer fear flying with their medical devices." The MedAlert app that Delta developed had been adopted by numerous major airlines. Brenda Harlan's career destruction had become a case study in corporate accountability taught in business schools nationwide. Captain Marcus Ellison had been promoted to Vice President of Inclusive Operations, overseeing similar reforms across the entire airline industry. Maya's story had transcended aviation. Her calm response to discrimination, her father's decisive action, and the power of social media to create immediate accountability had inspired changes in hospitals, schools, and retail establishments across the country. "I learned something important that day," Maya continued in her testimony. "Individual courage can transform entire industries, but only when people are willing to document injustice and demand change." The viral video of Flight 447 had been viewed by tens of millions across all platforms. It was studied in law schools, played at diversity training seminars, and referenced in federal discrimination cases. Maya's ordeal had created a lasting legacy of reform. Dr. Hale, now serving on a federal advisory panel for medical accommodation policies, often referenced Maya's case in his recommendations. The standardized medical identification protocols developed after her incident had been adopted by the Transportation Security Administration and implemented at airports nationwide. Maya's MIT studies now focused on aerospace engineering with a specialization in passenger safety systems. Her senior thesis project involved developing biometric monitoring systems that could automatically alert flight crews to passenger medical distress. What happened on Flight 447 taught me that power should protect the vulnerable, not exploit them, Maya concluded her congressional testimony. When we witness injustice, we have a choice: document it or become complicit in it. These real-life stories remind us that one person's courage can create systemic change. Maya's touching story proves that young voices can transform industries and that quiet strength often achieves more than loud anger. Have you witnessed discrimination that needed to be documented? Share your experiences in the comments below. Stories like Maya's show us that individual actions can create lasting change. Hit subscribe to see more life stories of people fighting injustice with intelligence and courage. Share this video to spread awareness about the power of accountability in creating social change.